Hey, I'm Enzo. I'm the founder of Accounting Prose, and I'm here to talk to you about my favorite thing, automation. Specifically about a post that I made on LinkedIn last week. And if you remember the post, it was about trying to create some insights from our clients' financial statements in an automated way. Our clients really need more than black and white financials. Even if we give them like really nice Fathom reports with beautiful charts and all kinds of detail, sometimes it still feels a little bit overwhelming. And just having the most important information at your fingertips, I think, is really important. And I also wanted to make sure that this wasn't like something that we only offered our like highest paying clients, like the people who pay us the most each month. We can always go deeper into these insights if we have a bigger engagement, but being able to surface things like, how did you do this month versus last month? Or how do you compare against your peers, like you're in your industry, based on the number of employees that you have, or the range of your revenue, or your location, things like that, not just how do marketing agencies do, or how do attorneys do. It's like trying to get a bit more granular. And then wanting to also make sure that we're not going to be repeating ourselves every single month, where we tell them something this month and it's the same thing we said last month and the month before. So it starts to sound like a broken record. So what I wanted to do is not only look at the prior period's financials and then history, but also look at how we communicated that with our clients. So that way it's something that they enjoy reading, and it's not something that they're just going to their eyes glaze over and there's nobody even looking at it at all. In addition to that, I wanted to make sure that while we're offering these deeper insights to our clients, that it's not creating a burden on my team where now they have to go very deeply into every client who may not have that as part of their engagement, and just be able to give them a way to create a deeper, stickier relationship with our clients. So really it's a win-win. Like, our clients are benefiting because they're getting really great insights. Our accountants look great because they're the ones that are delivering that. And I also want to be clear that even though this is going to be automated, there's always going to be a human in the loop as part of this process, mostly because I want to make sure that we're giving advice to our clients that is real. So even though we're dialing the temperature down to 0 inside of the different LLMs to avoid any sort of creativity, that the information is accurate, it is relevant to the client, and it helps them on their path. So if we're just giving them a bunch of gibberish and doesn't really matter, it's not going to give anybody value. And I do expect for us to iterate on this over time. So this is my V1, but when I get to V10, we'll see what it looks like then. And beyond that, really, I just want to make sure that we're giving people something really helpful right now, because the economy is kind of crazy and people are worried. And I feel like if there's something that we can do to help our clients sleep better at night, I'm all for it, even if it means I've got to learn a whole new tool or a whole new process. So anyway, I built this inside of Make because I am most familiar with Make. I can do it inside of N8N, but I wanted to ship this really quickly. I think in the future, I would probably do this inside of N8N using the community edition, because even though the operations are relatively inexpensive inside of Make, I think it's going to be a lot cheaper to run things through N8N, through their community edition, because all we have to pay for is server time, and we have everything set up through our own server. Additionally, when I was showing this to my team, they asked okay, so we're going to upload client financial data into various large language models. How can we be sure that this information is not going to be used to train the models? So in OpenAI, if you go into the API settings, and also your settings inside of the chat UI, you can go and say do not use this for training data. And I triple checked that we are not using any of our clients' information for training data. It only lives inside of our team account. And so that is helpful, because I do also worry that this information can be, just accidentally surfaced through somebody else's chat. I just don't want that to happen. So I've already gone through all those steps to make sure that all that is totally safe. So if you're wondering that question has been asked and it has been answered, because my team was also concerned about that as well. So I'm going to start by kind of walking through the process and then my thoughts behind why I chose different tools. And I'd love to hear from anybody who has also built something like this, or has some additional ideas of how this could be beneficial. The main reason I make these videos is because I want to be helpful to our accounting community. And I also love to hear how other people are building things. It's great to see people iterating on what I built, or just creating new and novel things that I can use in my practice. So this is really just about sharing, and I'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's go into the automation. So this is my make scenario. It's called All Clients Multi-Step AI Financial Review. And this is kicked off with a form stack form. So our controllers will use things like Keeper to validate the accuracy of our clients' work. But one thing that it lacks right now is an audit log that tells us how long did it take us to go from the point that the accountant first submitted their notice that this file is ready to review to the point that we actually got the finished financials out the door. How many iterations do we have to do for the financials? And what are some things that we can do in order to improve next time? So that way we can reduce our financial statement close from 10 days to 5 days or 15 days to 10 days, trying to make sure that we're like really following the metrics. These metrics are also used in order to evaluate our accountants and their controllers, letting them know like how they're doing, whether or not they're meeting their goals, etc. And I wanted to make sure that they're filling out a form stack with all this data. I did not want to use the same form stack because I didn't want anything to be confused, or I didn't want to accidentally get submissions while I was working on this process. So I created a whole new form stack form, and I'll show that to you, but it's got like really limited fields that they need to update because there's really nothing that I need other than like who is submitting this. So I will show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is the form, and what we're asking for is when this was submitted, the controller who submitted it. And I have the controller's email on here, but I don't actually think we even need this anymore because originally I was going to have these insights go over into an email to the controller, just like saying your insights are here. But we decided to switch this over to a HubSpot note that is on a ticket because we have tickets for our end of month financial close, like financial statements. And I'll probably just remove that as a required field and hide it. This is a dropdown using a smart list inside of FormStack for all of our clients. So we have all the names, which match the names inside of all of the other programs like Xero and HubSpot, etc. And then this is the financial statement period. So are we looking at the prior month, the prior quarter, or the prior year? And then tell me what month and year this relates to. And then they're going to upload the current draft financials. And originally I thought like maybe I would have them upload the current and the previous financials. And then I started like thinking more deeply, I don't really want to create more work for my accountants. And I even think that this might be too much work. Eventually, if I can figure out if there are financial statements published somewhere, like or created somewhere, like maybe we use that as a kickoff point. This client in particular uses Fathom. Like we use Fathom in order to deliver their financials to them. And I checked with Fathom and there's nothing like an open API that I can go in and like connect the wires with. So maybe something with Xero if we provide financials there, but this is going to be good for now. And I imagine like V1 and V10 are going to be very different. So imagine that you're a controller and you're filling out this form and you click submit, and I'll go back to my scenario. And so once that actually gets submitted, then this will switch the name of the controller to their HubSpot ID, because I want to be able to create a note that notifies the accountant. And in order for us to do that, we need their HubSpot ID. And if you're looking for the HubSpot ID, it's not when you go to the users and look at the URL, there's like a little string of numbers there. That is not the HubSpot ID. I actually had to use a different scenario in order to download all of my users, all of their IDs, and then I just drop them in here. And so this will say like, if Enzo submits the form, make sure that the form note, like the note for a HubSpot, will at Enzo because that's the person who is waiting for the insights. And then the next step is I'm looking for information inside of our HubSpot company record for this particular company. So that way we can like just look at relevant information that would influence the metrics and the advice that's given. So we're looking at not only the company name, the location, the industry. So not just like high level industry, but also exactly what do they do? So are they a marketing agency and they only do SEO? Or are they an attorney and they're just like a sole practitioner, or just stuff like that? I want to make sure that we're really getting to we're getting the right details when we're doing comparisons. We're also looking at the income range, because the advice that you give to a business that's just getting started, so maybe like under $500,000 in revenue versus a business that's like $10 to $15 million in revenue, that's going to be very different advice. You wouldn't give enterprise level advice to a company that's just getting started because they probably won't be able to employ any of the initiatives that you mentioned in those insights. And we really want to make sure that the advice is really right-sized. We're also looking at the employee range. So do they have like 1 employee or 100 employees? Because also advice about revenue per full-time employee will also come into play. We're also looking at the number of owners because we want to figure out equity. Like, are they taking draws that are excessive for 1 owner, or they're like 5 owners and that's why the draws are really high? And then finally looking at the entity type. So you're going to give different advice to a C corporation versus a sole proprietor. And we don't have many sole proprietors, but we do have some. And I wanted to make sure that you're not mixing up our advice and just giving wrong advice. So the next step is to download the financials. So this is an HTTP request. And then after that, it goes into a Google Sheet that has different columns that say like the name of the client, the financial statement period, and then the prior advice that was given. So we have an overview column, an action items column, and a next steps column. And we're looking at the 6 most recent pieces of advice for those different areas. So that way we don't sound like a broken record and we're not just like giving the same advice again and again. And that way it's like, if I give you the same advice this month, last month, the month prior, like you're not going to read my emails anymore. It's just not going to matter. You're going to know this, there wasn't a person actually looking at this. This is just automated, set it and forget it, and they're not actually doing anything with this. So we want to make sure that we're considering previous information, but again, like human in the loop happens later. So this is taking that advice and it's creating, aggregating the information as a table. And then next I'm going into ChatGPT, and this is using a ChatGPT assistant. Because we are uploading our financial statements as a PDF, I can't do a completion prompt with ChatGPT because it doesn't allow for PDF uploads. It'll allow for image upload, so I can convert that to an image. But if I change it to an image, it'll change it to all the pages as an image. And then their advice comes in as like, it's like evaluates the cover page and it gives me the complete advice. And then the next page, which is like the table of contents, and it's just super weird and it did not work. I also found out that it does not accept TIFFs. So if I try to change it from a PDF to a TIFF that has like multiple pages, will not work. So I had to upload the file to an assistant, which is only accessible inside of the API backend. And then I added the file to a vector store, and then I am then able to message the assistant. Now, one place that I got stuck here is I kept mixing up, like, I don't know why, but like mixing up a custom GPT and an assistant. And custom GPTs are on the chat UI, but the assistants are in the background. So finally, when I like woke up from my mental fog, I realized I was doing it wrong. And then this actually is what worked. And so I mentioned in my last, like my LinkedIn post, you can see that I actually have like multiple LLMs here. I have ChatGPT, I have Claude, and then I have Google Gemini. And that is because I wanted to also do this like how computers on planes work. If you have a computer on a plane and you're relying on one computer and it tells you that the engine is failing and you're crashing, and it's not, that's a problem, right? So what they essentially do is they collect information independently, and then they come to a consensus of like, what is the right information? So if computer A and B are saying that everything's great and computer C is like, we're gonna die, like everything's terrible, then it's probably gonna ignore the third computer because it's got some consensus with the other computers. And I didn't want to say like, only use ChatGPT, only use Claude. I wanted to be able to independently compare what does Claude say, what does ChatGPT say, and what does Gemini say. And I can go even further. I can say like, what does Perplexity say, or like all these other large language models, but I decided to just stick with 3 for now. And so it is doing the first step, independently looking through ChatGPT. Claude, I didn't have to do any sort of like weird backend, like upload a file or whatever. I could do that all in one step. And then with Gemini, I had to upload the file and then it could evaluate it. And then with this, it is taking the results from all three reviews, and then it's synthesizing it. And so I'm saying like, look at the company information and then look at the advice that was given by the 3 different LLMs, and then come to a consensus on like, what is the advice that you would give this person moving forward? And also take into consideration, what have we been telling them before? So that way we're not going to say the same exact thing that we said last time. And somebody actually brought this to my attention. They said, well, what happens if we are looking up the prior financial advice that we had given, and now it's somewhere in the ether, and I don't know where it is, but it's changed. Like, I got an answer, it was good, but not great. I changed it, then I sent it to the client. How can I update this? And I was like, well, this is going to be inside of a sheet, like a Google Sheet. So I'll give the controllers access to this Google Sheet. If something significant changes in the advice, not just like bolding or something like that, but like if there's something that really needs to change, go into the sheet, make the update for that period. And then the next time we run the financial statements, it's going to use what we added or what we adjusted, not like bad advice that it had given previously. The other thing is, somebody said, well, what happens if like the business information changes? So we've got a business that's making $1 million this year, and then all of a sudden next year they're making $10 million. What's our process for that? So we're going to have a process every quarter to go into HubSpot. We'll have a different section for like that information in the company profile. And then the controller will just fact check, like, is this still right? And if it is, we're going to move on. And if it's not, they'll make the change. So back to the automation. So now we have a consensus. It's looking at all this information. And then we have this rewritten as an email. So it's taking this and just writing it as an email. This is parsing JSON from this step here. So I'm saying, I want you to give this to me in a format that I can later put inside of a Google Sheet. So I need it to be structured like oversights, action items, next steps. And the next steps are going to be like a bulleted list, or actually action items are a bulleted list. I need to be able to make sure that's not just like a blob of information. And then finally, it goes into HubSpot and it creates an engagement, which is a note on a ticket. And so with this, if I go into the client's ticket, in this update, it will format everything exactly the same for every single client that we are doing this analysis for. But it has an overview, it has action items, and it has next steps. With this, again, we can always just like edit this if we want. But if we're happy with it, and I've done this, I ran this scenario probably like 50 times this week. And every time I was like, this is great. Like once I figured out the formatting, because that took me a minute, but I was happy with it. So I'm thinking in the future, like this is probably going to keep working out. But if for some reason something gets messed up, like we'll go back to the scenario and figure out like, what did we do in a prior step that is messing things up, and how do we get it to like paste on here correctly? And then you can see like the note is by me. So, and I'm actually following this ticket. So whenever this gets added, I will get a notification, and then I can take this information and put it somewhere else. And with this client in particular, we have them inside of Fathom. So I'll show you what that looks like at the start of their report. This is the first page of their financial statements. And then we are just grabbing the overview and dropping it inside of the insights section. The action items we're grabbing and dropping in here. And then the next steps are listed here. And then beyond that, there's just like going to be all the graphs and like all the detailed financial information. So this is the first thing that they see whenever they actually get a notification from Fathom that their financials are ready. Now, for those of you who are using other than Fathom, maybe you're going to stick with Xero reports. I've also figured out a way to get inside of Xero reports and have it look really nice. This is the reports section of Xero. And I don't know if you're familiar with this report or not, but the management report is really nice. And if you just want to send like one consolidated report, I highly suggest that you use this. I would say that there are some benefits of doing the like template inside of the customer versus inside of the advisor reports. With the customer, you can add custom reports that you've generated inside of here instead of like this individual org. If you're using the advisor level reports where you're sort of putting things together and you're going to apply the template en masse, I might have done it incorrectly, but I wasn't able to grab any custom reports that we generated inside of this client's file after I applied the template inside of this client's file. Like you have access to the advisor reports up here on the top bar here. So I would say if you have a lot of custom reports that are specific for your client, it might be best just to do this inside the management report. And I actually have already done this and done some adjustments, and I made this into a custom report that is specific for this client. But let's go over to the custom reports. And I have this management report for client. So I'll go ahead and open this up. And here I have, I've used a blank page report here. I only have the overview and action items. If you actually want to add more information or change the layout, you can go to the update layout and maybe you want to add like the next steps here. The only reason I didn't add the next steps here is because I wasn't able to figure out how to create a hyperlink to book a call with their controller. So I just left it off of here, but if you have other information you want to add, certainly can add it here. And then this comes with a collection of financial statements. Typically, you'll see things like the executive summary, cash summary, income statement, balance sheet. I also added AR aging, top customers, AP aging, top vendors, and then you can even go in and add another custom report, like just on the fly. I want to see maybe the draws for the current year, so I can add that here, and that will just be like the last page on the report, and it'll filter for the last month. But what I wanted to do is not just leave it with the normal filters that are turned on. I went through and customized every one of these where I want to look at this prior month versus the average, but you can always change that to like last month, etc. Same thing with the cash summary. The income statement, I wanted to look at the last 2 months and then have year to date. And then for balance sheet, I wanted to look at prior month and the same month in the prior year. And AR aging, AP aging, I like having that. This report for top customers is really good because a lot of clients ask us for top customers, top vendors. And I think maybe one area of improvement that I would like to see inside of like customizing reports here is I'd like to be able to see SIFT graphs inside of this report. But currently, even though this client does have access to SIFT, I cannot add images or I can't add like the graphs on here. So that's something I would love to see later. But with this, as long as I've customized it exactly as I want, if I make sure that this layout is saved as custom, the next time I come in here to just run this report, I don't have to recreate it. It's just ready for me. So I hope that this has been helpful, hearing how I think through my process. And I'd love to hear how you guys are building automations and what you're doing to serve your clients even better. If you're a client and you're not currently getting this, there's only 1 or 2 clients currently, let me know. We'll bump you up to the top of the list. If you're a business owner who wants to be a client, reach out to me and let me know because we can certainly get this set up for you.